radical experience in my own life when I was around 40 years old. One moment you're in the depth of darkness, and the next moment you're in bliss.
So when we master emotions, we start to understand that they're frequencies. They're not something happening within us, but a frequency we're stepping into. The idea that joy, like unconditional love, is available to us at all times.
Quite frankly, I think millions of people need it today.
Likely billions, I would say.
I think you're right.
How do you navigate this world of chaos? Are you able to stay connected to a sense of hope, joy, or compassion? And what if you could ask a series of experts how they navigate in this world of crisis and find ways to connect with joy? Well, in today's podcast, you're going to get a little bit of that. I'm very excited to be in conversation with Halina Goldstein and Sheila Applgate from the Joy Keepers Network. This is a conversation that is so timely and so needed. In the conversation, we talk about the recent book release that the Joy Keepers Network has spearheaded, and it's all about answering the question, how do you live in a world in crisis? So check it out. I think you're going to find something good here. Halina Goldstein is the author of spiritual poetry, fiction and nonfiction, living in Denmark and working globally. She is the founder of Awakening to Joyful Living and the Joy Keepers Network. Halina has been dedicated to spiritual and personal growth since 1973. As a spiritual mentor, she worked with therapists, coaches, teachers, and creators who have dropped out of a successful career to follow their dream. Halina helped them find out what it is that is really their life's work, and then bring it to the world from a space of joy, certainty, and flow. At this point in her life, Halina is focused on writing and on the further development of the Joy Keepers Network. Sheila Applgate is a renowned conscious life coach, healer, seer, best-selling author with over 25 years of experience guiding individuals toward conscious living. Her innovative conscious meditation technique and transformative, consciously awesome Gnostic adventure have helped countless people overcome personal roadblocks, spark their imaginations, and embrace lives filled with joy and passion. Leaders and experts across various industries trust her unique blend of therapeutic, intuitive coaching, and divine guidance. So enjoy the conversation and grab your copy of the book. It's time to upgrade your life. In this podcast and our live events and retreats, we explore ways to hack enlightenment by integrating ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience with transpersonal psychology. From plant medicine and psychedelics to breathwork, mindfulness, and neurofeedback, my guests and I will shine a light on the unique capacity that we have to use our conscious mind to evolve individually and collectively as a species. Tune in each week on your favorite podcast player or the Pennington Media YouTube channel for interviews and discussions about holistic healing of trauma and adverse childhood experiences, burnout recovery, and intentional wellness. Hello, beautiful Halina and Sheila. I'm so grateful to have you connected here for a special edition of the Conscious Evolution podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It is special.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
Well, it was quite an honor for me to have been somewhat instrumental in the creation or the founding of the Joy Keepers Network. And it felt like a full circle moment because you, Halina, have been in some of our books at Make Your Mark Global. So to be invited to be a part of this new book, How Do You Live in a World of Crisis? Ideas for finding joy, clarity, and connection. I feel so honored, and it feels so appropriate that we get together again. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like there's a circle coming around, and it meant so much to me that you were so supportive in the beginning, when it was just tiny seed, right? and you helped that seed and me become what it is today. So that is beautiful and special. Thank you.
Well, before we get into the book, why don't we give people a little bit of a background about the Joy Keepers Network? What was your initial vision, Halina? And now that Sheila has joined, you're hosting these regular insights and talks and stuff, and then we'll get into the book.
Sure. So the idea came out of nowhere, as they say, or out of the blue, at a time in my life where I had a feeling that I needed to start all over, as we do from time to time. And the idea was to create a network for people, a network that was dedicated to keeping the frequency of joy. That was pretty much all I knew, and it wasn't much. And it was also a weird situation because I'm a very introverted person. I'm not the big organizer or networker or anything like that. But joy, I did have some insights around. But I said yes, as we all do when we're called, and started kind of trying to find my way into it, and had this vision of a network, so people around the world who would communicate around joy, who would support each other in connecting with joy on a regular basis, and it was kind of gradually like trying this and trying that, and having a newsletter, the usual stuff, so to speak. And then at some point, and it was a good thing because that was like building the foundation. And then once that was in place, there was a new guidance coming through, and that was a wonderful guidance too, that the network wasn't to be my network, but it was to be a network that was led by a leadership team. And so the next search started looking for team members, and some people joined and contributed in their own ways and then left. And it was a little bit like dancing and nothing really happening, but learning, I think. And then at some point, Sheila and I met, and that was quite a meeting. It was a bit like when you, Andrea, and I met. It was that feeling of there's a connection, there's a bridge. It's important, and it was very much around joy, and I asked Sheila if she would join the team, even if she was very, very, very busy at the time. Well, she always is, but also at the time, and she graciously said yes. And then everything started falling into place, actually, and eventually it just became this team of two people so far, and maybe others will join in the future, but right now it's us, and it started developing new ways. Sheila, would you like to share more about that?
Well, from my perspective, I met Halina at ETTG conference. And so I have to thank COVID because it went online and I was in, that COVID mode, and I jumped into this space and immediately was like, oh, Halina, yes, hello. So when she invited me to be a part of the Joy Keepers leadership team, it was an honor. And it was something I couldn't say no to, because joy is, I had made a decision a few years prior to that joy would be my model for my business, that would be how I run, that my prime directive, right? So it was a really good fit. And like Halina said, there was a lot of kind of moving around and surrendering in that beginning. And first I thought maybe I broke the Joy Keepers team, because we were like, okay, and there's this surrender point where we were like, okay, well, let's just not do anything unless joy leads us. And so from that point on, though, we ended up doing a lot. So it was sort of a release, a surrender to not try for anything. And in that moment, all these creative ideas started to come and people started to connect, and it's been wonderful.
Well, that's the metaphor of life, right? We set plans and hold tight and things shift, and then we have to surrender. So I want to get back to one thing, and Halina, you'll get to chime in as the founder, but Sheila, this concept that Halina mentioned, a frequency of joy, what does that mean to you? Or what does it mean for you to like have that as your prime directive, this connection to joy? Yeah,
so frequency of joy is that's just something that resonates perfectly with me. My work is working and helping people to navigate the higher levels of consciousness. I also, with my background in therapy, have focused a lot on emotions. And so when we master emotions, we start to understand that they're frequencies. They're not something happening within us, but a frequency we're stepping into. So the idea that joy, like unconditional love, is available to us at all times. And we have the option to recognize it, to dance with it, or to ignore it. And to me, you can even have joy in the darkest times. So for me, in a time of deep grief, I feel like there's also joy, because part of why, say, we're grieving a loved one, part of why we're crying is because of the beautiful memories. And so savoring each emotion when you bring joy with you, it can be a beautiful thing.
I love that. I love that. And I know we'll get into why I love that in a moment. But first, Halina, tell me what that meant for you in the very early stages of saying, I want to help create a network where people are connecting through this frequency of joy. What does that mean? Of course, you're a musician, so I'm sure that sense of resonance is in there. But what does that mean? If you have felt drawn to sit with psilocybin, then I invite you to join us on retreat in the Netherlands, where it is completely legal and safely facilitated with me and an expert team. We are all trauma-trained, trauma-informed, culturally competent and sensitive facilitators, and you will be held with the utmost care so that you can safely dive into your psyche for deep healing and conscious evolution. So check out our website at oneDrea.com. That's the number 1, DREA.com. And you can learn more about each of our variety of psilocybin truffle retreats in the Netherlands. I look forward to seeing you there.
Well, that was the big question. And, when I look back at my life, and I've been kind of clearing out here in my place, and I found some brochures I created like when I was in my 30s. Back then I would teach music, and the name of the modality that I offered that at the time was something around doing learning music with personal growth and joy. So that word joy has been there all the way, and people kept coming back to me and telling me that. But in a way, so I had this feeling, it was very simple for me in a way, but it wasn't. I think the experience of frequency for me, I related to Eckhart Tolle's definition of frequency keepers. So the people that don't have to be very visible in the world, don't have to have any special role or leader, but who are very important for our collective consciousness by keeping the frequency of joy. So this was kind of the direction I was thinking, that there's this sense of joy that I feel connected with, but also that it's a frequency that we all can connect to and consciously. But what these days, I start looking at it in somewhat different way, because I was thinking like it's specific people that specifically choose to keep the frequency of joy. But now with everything happening and joy kind of going mainstream with Kamala Harris, I am thinking joy and Joy Keepers Network and the frequency, it's something that many people keep, and some do it consciously and some not, but it is becoming more and more visible, and the network is in that way. We don't know how big it is. I hope this makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I mean, just getting to where we are today, we are in 2024, where our world has been through so much tumult, definitely since COVID, and then just one after another, we are just hearing more and more crises that really challenge us to feel joy. And as I've shared with you, I struggled, living over here in Europe, feeling somewhat disconnected from some of the challenges my brothers and sisters in America are facing. But then with Ukraine and then with Gaza, it's like, I can't escape it. No matter how much I say I'm not going to watch the news. And for me, what has been really challenging is holding on to joy without feeling guilty. Because there would be something just walking down the street, enjoying the sunrise, or something with friends. And then I was instantly struck with these feelings of, but so-and-so can't experience this anymore. What about the other people who can't appreciate a sunrise right now? And I know that crumbling doesn't work for me very long, because then I get miserable and then it just creates this downward spiral. And so I really felt like I had to hold on to at least compassion. And I've been inching my way toward allowing joy. So I feel like this book, this collection of authors that are each sharing how we have found our way through crisis, or how we are finding our way currently through a variety of crises, and staying connected to joy, I found that really, really timely. So being as busy as I am, somehow I found time to share this chapter. But I'd love to hear from the two of you. What has it been like to work with the other authors and to hear and read these different stories and different approaches that people are finding in a way to live in a world in crisis and chaos?
To me, it's been a delight. Like nearly everyone that we reached out to responded with this excitement and gratitude for being a part of something, for this existing, right? And so that energy just kept building as we invited more people, and we saw the beautiful network of people that would be a part of this group. And then when the stories came in, and each one is so unique, each chapter is very different, even if people touch on same types of concepts like gratitude, they took a very different approach in each one. And we led through joy, right, Halina? It was like, it just worked out no matter what. And we accomplished that in such a short period of time that it can't be just human.
Yes. I had similar experience, of course, of this. It started with just an idea. It feels a little bit like, that could be interesting, and all of a sudden, it comes alive. And then the way everyone reacted was just amazing, and lifted the project. And what also was very important for me in reading all these stories is that, because we didn't say anything to anyone, we just said, this is the question, how would you answer it? And every single author started with their own personal experience. And that I find that so moving and so valuable, that these are all leaders in their own work, but none of the others comes like, here I am the leader, I have the idea, this is how to do it. Each of them came with a sense of like humility and this is what I experienced, these are the challenges I've been through, this is what I've learned, and this is why I have hope, and this is why I know it is possible to reach joy. That was and it's beautiful and amazing for me, and so valuable.
And I love that you've made this book free. So it's available to anyone who's looking for insight or inspiration or other ways to approach this concept of joy. I love that. Have you started receiving any feedback from readers?
A little bit, not much yet, because we only just released the book. But a few people said that it meant a lot to them, and they started sharing it. And some of these people we didn't ask them to. We do ask for it at the end of the book. That's natural. But with the few people, there's this feeling, I want to share it with others. And that's exactly what we hope will happen with this book, that it will reach everyone who needs it. And quite frankly, I think millions of people need it today.
Likely billions, I would say.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sheila, talk about your contribution to the book. How have you been incorporating joy or gratitude or any of these other practices? How do you navigate this life with this world in crisis right now?
So what I talked about in this chapter is one of the things that I really focus on as a meditation teacher and conscious life coach, and that is the imagination. And so I feel like it's very undervalued in our world right now, and that it is actually our superpower. It's our ability to move, like you were saying, when you remember, when you were like, I need to be in joy, even though all these things are happening on the earth right now. And we think about with compassion the people that are struggling, but our ability to imagine beyond the struggle and to hold that space of joy by using our imagination to fill ourselves back up. I think that that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give the world, because we're not denying the fact that people are in pain, but we're saying, okay, this is your turn to be in pain. I'm going to stay over here and send love to you, but hold that space of joy so that you can feel that hope and know that it is right around the corner for you. It's coming for you. And the whole world needs that as well right now. So when we have the luxury of not feeling completely immersed in the chaos of the world, I feel like it's our responsibility to then hold that space for the imagination of what can be.
I love the way you describe that, because it does come back to the idea of a frequency keeper. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm not denying that there's suffering in the world, but I'm just going to hold this frequency as a possibility and imagine that at some point you're going to touch back into this joy. Or for me, it's also just a sense of relief. Like, I'll send out, wishes that people can just have relief.
Right.
So that sense of hope, I love that through the imagination. Mm. Thank you for that. And what about you, Halina?
Well, it was for me an interesting process too, because I sat down and I asked myself, what can I express from experience? What can I say to people that I know for sure? And the first thing that came to me is that I know from own experience, and we all do, that we never know when change happens. Change can happen in the most unexpected moments, and however we experience our world right now doesn't really say anything about what's going to happen in the future. Everything is possible. And then I was taken back to a very radical experience in my own life when I was around 40 years old, where I experienced that from one moment to another. And I know you've had similar experiences, Andrea. From one moment you're in the depth of darkness, and the next moment you're in bliss. That is possible, and I think that is possible globally too, in the sense that we are being guided through the darkness, so that we can create what we're here to create. I don't even have words for this, but I do believe in change, and I do believe in it happening whenever it happens. And I also know that it happens through our practices. It happens through the way we live our daily life. So that was what I wanted to share in my chapter, to see change can happen. There's simple things you can do every day, and joy will help you through. It helps us through. It helps us to connect with that frequency, exactly as you both say. It's not a denial of suffering, but it's a confirmation of truth.
I love the way you put that, and it makes me think of something that I've shared with you and mentioned in the chapter that I shared, and that is, I feel like we are going through a collective dark night of the ego. Mm. And of course, this has been going on before, but I've heard so many different spiritual teachers talk about a collective awakening. And some people would say, how can you say that? Look at the politics, look at the environment, look at all these things. And what I've really resonated with is this idea that yes, the powers that be, the structures that have been built through egotism, through colonialism, through take, those structures are coming to their time of an end. They're not sustainable for the planet. They're not sustainable for societies. And so what we're seeing is they are in the process of disintegrating, but they're not ready to let go. So they're grasping and clutching and getting meaner and uglier. But what I've heard is that just hold on. This is a process. That too is going to dissolve because we are going through a collective awakening. So even though we're in the midst of the darkness, the collective dark night of the ego, it is also the dawn of the soul, or it's the prelude to the dawn of the soul, where more compassion-focused, joy-focused, sharing-focused energies are going to step forward, the things that are aligned with our heart and our soul. And so for me, it's been comforting, even though I feel like I might not be alive long enough to see it, come into that golden age. But it's helped me reframe, in particular, because what I saw during the pandemic. So like both of you, I also teach meditation. During the pandemic, I went live every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week on YouTube and Facebook, just leading guided meditations to help people tune back into compassion and to peace and to lower anxiety. And the thing that I saw over the couple years of COVID that really shocked me was the number of people that I never would have thought would be quote unquote spiritual were coming in, and they were having these awakening moments. The crisis of the pandemic, the shutdown, the insecurity, the loss, being forced to be with your family in close quarters, it was giving people this catalyst for awakening, realizing that the structures they were in, some relationships or jobs, was not sustainable. Some people admitted that they were in burnout. They're like, I never knew that I was until I could finally stop. And so it gave me a sense of hope, because I was seeing people that I would never think would have joined a meditation class or anything like that. And so I'm also realizing that perhaps what we're living today in 2024 could be a part of that as well. It's this catalyst for awakening. And it's this catalyst for people saying, I've got to live differently. I may not be able to change all of the structures out there, but I can start with myself. Does that resonate for either of you, that we are going through this collective shift?
So much.
Absolutely.
Sheila, you're still in America, right? So
I am in the US.
Let's talk about it from your perspective. I'm an American living in France for 14 years, so I feel a bit removed. But I feel like there's all sorts of turmoil and there's moments of hope. And what is it like for you?
When you were talking about the dying of the ego and it clinging on, I keep equating at least the US politics. But I think the whole shift of like a Shakespearean death, how they keep dying and then they come back up and then they die and they come back up. Like, I feel like we've been watching that forever, but as in every Shakespearean play, eventually they die out. That energy dies out. So I feel a lot of hope. I feel joy. I definitely feel tired of the old energy, but I'm seeing it like, I'm also seeing it like somebody said that they would clean the swamp, and maybe they actually were, because when a lake, and I assume a swamp, cleans itself, it pulls all the muck and stuff from the bottom, and it looks really dirty and you can't see through it. And then it settles and it's all clean. And I do feel like that's what's happening in the US and in the world right now in many different ways. I feel like there's some deep-rooted things that have been holding us back as a species moving into higher consciousness, and they're coming to the surface. And I feel like the choice has already been made. We're just having to move through the process of it.
Are you a therapist, a coach, or a doctor who might be interested in providing safe, ethical, and legal psychedelic preparation or integration, then check out my new course with the Academy of Therapy Wisdom. It is the trauma-informed psychedelic therapist. I'm really proud of this course. It includes pre-recorded modules as well as live calls and homework and group discussions that will really help you prepare for this exciting field in the most ethical and trauma-informed way. So check that out. If you happen to be a person who wants to prepare for your own psychedelic journey, whether you're doing that with ketamine or in a legal setting or flying to South America, I want you to be prepared. So check out my course, The Ultimate Guide to Safe Psychedelic Preparation. It is a jam-packed, full-on course that will teach you about psychedelic substances, their legality, how to prepare yourself, especially if you've had any trauma in your background, what to look for in a relatable and reliable and safe shaman or psychedelic facilitator. In the Ultimate Guide course, we also meet once a month so that you can ask me questions live. You can also connect with a global community of emerging psychonauts. So check out these two resources for you. I've made them with all of my heart and love so that you can be prepared and be safe.
Thank you for that. Halina, what about for you?
Well, that is so true what you say, both of you. I was reminded as you speak of Gaza that you mentioned in the beginning, because I have family in Israel. And when these things started to happen, it was so painful for me to watch in both in general, as it is for all of us to see suffering, but also to know that my people were acting in a way that was opposite of what I thought my people should have learned from their own history. I'm Jewish, so and also I was meeting members of my family, and it was it was so difficult for me to embrace that. And I was really guided through it. And the one thing that I've been learning, and that goes back to holding the frequency of joy, was that I was not helping anyone by blaming them. I was not helping anyone by judging them, but I was helping by keeping the frequency of joy and keeping the frequency of love and meeting them with that energy. And in the beginning, it felt like a hard thing to do. But one day, it just happened one day you get this big aha, and one day I had this is liberating for me, I realized. It is me I am freeing by not going into judgment, not going into all that, but coming back to my own joy, coming back to my own light. So in that way, we're all part of this process, right? Regardless of which side we are of the big divides and the big separations.
Mm. I love the way you put that, and bringing it back to our own liberation. I know there was a moment where I was so frustrated because on social media, which, as you know, I used to be there a lot. It's like you can't win. If you post anything, there's people attacking. And it made me really go within to kind of check why I felt compelled to post certain things or share certain people's posts. And I started to just really focus on, okay, if I want a ceasefire, let me find where in myself am I throwing bombs or bullets. Let the ceasefire begin within me. Because, Halina, it comes back to what you say about, I'm not helping if I'm throwing judgment or hate. That it's not creating anything. But if I can change my frequency and vibration and the practices that I'm doing, then I will be somewhat lifted to at least affect change where I can. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, because I feel like this is a completely complex issue. I don't think anything is going to change overnight. And as I've already said, my cynical, can any of this change appreciably in my lifetime? I'm not sure. But it definitely brings us down to the wire of how do I want to show up in this world of crisis? And it didn't make it into my chapter of the book, but as I was wrestling with all of this, I went back to the work of Viktor Frankl. I went back and read more of Audre Lorde and Frida Kahlo and even Harriet Tubman, just to find out, like, what did these people do in the midst of crisis where, you know, you talked earlier about uncertainty, like change comes and you don't know when it's coming or even when it's going to change back. And I thought, how did they do that? And would I have the strength to fight in the ways that they did? And they each fought in different ways, right? And so it really had me thinking about another tragedy where it was very certain what the outcome was going to be. And that was the Titanic. So if you remember back to at least the film version, on the Titanic, there were only a certain number of lifeboats. And not everybody was going to get on those lifeboats. The captain didn't jump over and say, give me that boat and that life jacket and I'm going to save myself. And if you remember, the musicians as well, they decided they're going to keep playing the music as the ship's going down. And that really struck me in a moment of like deep questioning, like, what is my role in this? And it's when I really decided I'm going to tune into who I really am as an artist, and I'm going to create. I'm going to help do what I can to help raise that vibration into compassion or into joy or into appreciation and beauty, because I don't know how much longer I have, you know, and how do I want to live in these last days? So I don't know if that strikes anything for either of you. I'd love to hear, you know, Sheila, I see you nodding along.
I think it's beautiful. I love your description of the Titanic and the musicians. Like, that's the most profound spot. And yeah, just to be in that space is such a good visual for me. So I love that. And I live on the land that Harriet Tubman, I actually live in my house. It was on the Underground Railroad, and Harriet Tubman lived for many years in a town near me. So she is just present in my life, and especially since I moved into this house 20 years ago. So thinking of her, and she is the one to always return to, like, okay, if she could go back for another run, I can do this. I can do this. So yeah, I was resonating with everything you just said. It was beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing that you're in that presence and tuning into
she's
that
very
energy.
strong here.
Wow.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah.
And you, Halina? I know you've shared, but
yeah, but you know, actually, there is so much. I almost feel rewriting some following chapters to the book here, right? I want to go back because as you were speaking of Titanic, my thoughts went back to the pandemic that you mentioned, and the miracle of the pandemic was that I think this was, even if we've heard about climate crisis and all the other crises for a long time, during the pandemic, because it was so physical, I think so many people understood at last that we're in this together. We're in this together for good and for worse. If we don't do anything, it's going to get worse together, and the other way around. And beautiful things started to happen, including music and including saving people's lives and the whole scale. And I think I hope and I trust that we've learned something from it, because I think there's only one idea that can bring this transformation through, and that's the idea that we're in this together. And I think people are starting to get it, regardless of where they are on a spiritual journey or personal growth journey or all kinds of other journeys. I think people are starting, and also organizations and governments start to realize, because it's gotten so bad and so difficult, they started seeing we're in this together. And they didn't quite see it on the Titanic. Some people did, and some people didn't. But I think that's the idea that will help us move through this, knowing that it's all of us. It's for all of us to make that change. We have to, and we have to, as you said, Andrea, find our place in that and our role in it.
Well, as we're wrapping up, what else would you like our audience to know about the Joy Keepers Network, about other ways to connect with you, and of course, to get a copy of the free ebook?
Sheila?
Well, we would love to have you join us in the Joy Keepers Network. You can join through Facebook into the Joy Keepers Network group. You can learn more about it at joykeepers.org. And you can get the book directly from joykeepers.org/free book. So easy to remember. And we're not even taking an email. There is nothing that you have to give us, not even your email. We just want it to be able to reach everyone that can benefit from it.
And you, Halina?
That, and also the fact that along the way we have the group, we have some resources that we share. We start creating courses, so there's a lot of options, and also we always invite people to be part of co-creating the Joy Keepers Network. So and it has been changing along the way. So whatever you need the Joy Keepers Network to be, you can co-create that by joining the group and sharing what you see, and maybe being inspired to what you can create where you live in your own community. That's important too.
That's a lovely invitation. So one of the things that I liked about this book is that you also offered each author the opportunity to share something that might support people on this journey toward joy through crisis. Halina, tell us a little bit about the free offering that they'll get at the end of your chapter.
Yeah, that is actually so important, because this book is so rich that everyone can decide how far and how deep they want to go. You can read each chapter and be inspired. And just by reading it, there are some tools that are mentioned that you can start using, or some approaches. And then from each author, there is a free tool that you can then request and dive even deeper and even deeper and even deeper. So the vision I have that keeps coming to me, that it's a really a rich journey that you're invited in, and because we are very different people, and the chapters are very different. We hold the same light and the same idea, you could say, but every expression is very different. So it's really possible, I think, for everyone to find the mirror that speaks best to them, and then go deeper and dive deeper, and continue working with a liberation of ourselves for each reader, and we're readers too, and also the liberation of the world around us.
And your free gift in particular, was it the C approach?
Yeah, it's the C approach, which speaks exactly to what we've been talking about. It speaks to how can we move through pain and suffering and difficulty in a very simple way, and at the same time open to light, open to joy, and bring that into the space. And it really shows a way of not denying, but embracing everything that we have with us.
Well, thank you for sharing that gift with everyone who grabs the book. Mm-hmm. How about you, Sheila?
My free gift is an audio of a guided meditation. Conscious meditation is the technique I use, but it is a visualization to help you unlock that imagination a little bit more and really draw in and attract the things into your life that you desire, such as joy, in order to create your best life.
I love that. I love that. And to round it out, my gift is a PDF and some guided meditations that are specifically designed for people going through a dark night, whether it's the collective one or a personal one, to use that moment or these moments as a catalyst for post-traumatic growth. So giving a sense of directionality has been really helpful in my life. If I know my suffering has a purpose, which is also part of what Viktor Frankl's message kind of gave back to me, So that's in this PDF and guided meditation. So I do sincerely hope that everyone on our various lists who are listening to this podcast and otherwise, that you'll get your copy of this free book, How Do You Live in a World of Crisis? Ideas for Finding Joy, Clarity, and Connection by a group of authors from around the world who each really have such unique perspectives on how we can tune into survival, joy, compassion, and even grace. So thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much, Halina. I'm so grateful that we got to connect again on this, and can't wait to watch it unfold and spread around the world.
Thank you so much for creating this space and for being the blessing for the Joy Keepers Network from the beginning and still now, 7 years later. Thank you.
I know. Amazing. Thanks, and bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Conscious Evolution Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review and rating on your favorite podcast player. This helps us get the content out to a larger audience. And to watch the video version of the podcast, visit the Pennington Media YouTube channel. Want more info on how psychedelics may improve your mental well-being, how to choose a retreat, or what to look for in a shaman? Get on the Psychedelic Curious email journal. The link is in the show notes and on my website. You can also sign up for my free masterclass series, where each month I take a deep dive into a topic in holistic healing, trauma recovery, self-love, resilience, and psychedelic-assisted therapy.